So let me explain how we do what we do here at Trinity, how we go about the task of educating people. You can memorize facts, formulas, anecdotes, proverbs. Look, some people memorize tons of stuff and they keep it all up here, and that's great for trivia nights. But it's not what I would call deep learning, the stuff that sticks for a lifetime and that shapes you as a human being. Deep learning happens when you use information to solve problems, okay? So it's unfortunate in my mind that in some schools, colleges, unis, they still teach with this mentality. We're going to present you with a whole range of information and we're going to ask you to memorize it all. And then we hope that one day in the future you'll come across a problem that requires just this set of information and you'll say, gee, I'm so glad that I studied trigonometry back in year 8, or I'm so glad that I studied counselling techniques in the second year of my degree. And I'm so glad I remember everything my teachers ever told me. It's not really how things pan out, is it? No, the way that education works best is for you to be absorbing information because you need it to solve a problem. That's the stuff you remember. You'll do a better job of remembering information if you learned it in order to solve a problem that meant something to you personally. And that's how the pattern works in real life. So that's what I think education systems should ideally provide for us. And that's part of the rationale for adjusting the way that we teach here at Trinity. But let me get practical and talk about 3 real changes that we've made that bring that change about. We've switched to a hybrid mode of education. We've taken the concept of a flipped classroom seriously, and we're focusing on inquiry-based learning, IBL. Let me say a little bit more about each of those 3 things. COVID-19 pushed the whole world towards a hybrid model of education. By hybrid, I mean that we're still teaching in classrooms because learning communities will always be important, but students can now opt to take classes online via Zoom or another platform. That hybrid approach is the new normal in education, and it's not just because of COVID, it's because people are trying to do so much with their lives. 90% of our students here are part-timers because they also have families, they have jobs, they have other commitments. The second shift has to do with the concept of a flipped classroom. What does that mean? Are we turning our colleges upside down? Well, kind of, but not literally. Every educational institution has a philosophy of teaching that undergirds and influences how the faculty do what they do. Often that approach to education is behind the scenes. It affects how lecturers teach, but it's not necessarily obvious to students. I think a philosophy of education should be transparent to everyone, not just to the lecturers, but to the students as well. Because you will better, if you better understand how people learn, you will become a better learner. Now, I said earlier that learning happens as you use information to solve problems. Traditionally, in colleges and universities, you learn information during a 2 or 3 hour slot with lectures, you're taking notes, you're absorbing information, and then you get homework. That is problems to solve in your own time when you're at home and there's no one around to check your answers. Homework includes things like writing essays, answering quizzes, doing research-based assignments, sitting exams, and all of those things are usually done solo, on your own. Now, there are problems with this model, and in a nutshell, what a flipped classroom approach does is it switches or flips the locations for those 2 basic activities. Where does learning information now happen? Instead of happening in a long 3-hour lecture, where you might sit next to your friends, but you can't talk to them, you're asked to be quiet and listen. It happens at home where you can pause a video or pause the podcast, take notes. You can go and have dinner with your family, put the kids to bed. You can even rewind content, make sure you've understood properly. For at least some of the content learning, you set the pace. And then on the flip side, where does the problem-solving part of learning happen? Well, rather than solving problems as homework, where you have no one to help you when you get stuck, it happens in the classroom, where a lecturer can observe your approach to problem solving and comment on it. You can collaborate with classmates. You can ask questions when you get stuck. It makes a lot of sense, right? And there are a number of other advantages to this flipped classroom approach as well. The third element that ties in nicely with a hybrid approach and with the flipped classroom is called inquiry-based learning, IBL it's known as. Inquiry-based learning is not new. Schools and universities have been developing and using it for the past few decades. As the name suggests, it begins with the inquiry. It begins with a problem, a question, and instead of deductive or didactic teaching that gives you a whole bunch of content in the hope or assumption that you will one day find it useful or practical, IBL begins with the question and lets the student navigate their own way towards an answer. It's inductive. Another way to put it is that you learn content not just because the teacher told you to, but because you need that content to answer your inquiry. And so here, our third hour of lectures are highly interactive. They involve working with others, discussion, evaluation, problem solving. So that's it. Those are the 3 shifts that we've initiated here at the college in 2021. How we do what we do here at Trinity College Queensland. And they all integrate very nicely together, as I hope you can see.